that they're going to the University of Florida.
City of Sanford City Commission Work Session, Monday, January 5th, 2016, 4 p.m. Railroad Depot Room, 2nd floor, Sanford City Hall, 300 North Park Avenue, Sanford, Florida.
Go straight into the presentation of the Sanford Housing Authority request for Choice Neighborhoods Initiative grant application.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Commission, we have received a request from the Housing Authority to go for a grant. We have Mr. Philpott, the chair, and so I'll turn it over to him.
And I'll turn it over to Mr. Grant.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Vivian Bryan. I'm President and CEO of the Orlando Housing Authority and the Sanford Housing Authority pursuant to an agreement. And you have Chair Philpott here from the Sanford Housing Authority. We have Orlando Housing Authority staff, Mr. Fleming and Mr. Rizwan. And then we have our consultant, EJP Consultants, who will make the presentation. They are preparing the application for the Sanford Housing Authority's Choice Neighborhood Grant, and it's a plan grant, and I will allow her to make the presentation, and then if you have any questions afterwards, we'd be happy to entertain those. But I do have some very good news that I'd like to share with you. According to HUD, the Sanford Housing Authority is now a high performer with a score of 92 on its public housing assessment score. So we're really pleased at that, and happy to report that to you.
Good.
Congratulations. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Might have to sit down. My name is Gail F. I'm with EJP Consulting Group, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Good to see you again. I was here a little more than a year ago for the first application. What I'd like to do is sort of walk through what we're doing this year to improve it, but start with sort of what happened last year. What I'd also like to do, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Choice Neighborhoods program, we've got a little bit of a handout. I don't want to go into great detail about it here now, but it's a HUD program that funds revitalization activities in a distressed neighborhood. We've targeted the Goldsboro neighborhood, and it provides planning and potential implementation dollars for addressing neighborhood housing and people, services to people. So last year, unfortunately, HUD was a little bit confused or misunderstood the relationship between the Sanford Housing Authority and the Orlando Housing Authority. I think it's a unique situation for them to have another housing authority managing a housing authority that has no staff. So they essentially didn't score the Orlando Housing Authority's capacity with its previous experience on Hope 6, because they were looking to Sanford to provide that capacity, the housing authority. They also did not count EJP's experience, our experience in Choice Neighborhoods, because the letter that awarded us the planning coordinator services was actually not signed by the Sanford Housing Authority. It was signed by the Orlando Housing Authority, which technically has the right to sign those documents. So that's what the issue was last year. However, we knew that it was a good application because even without the capacity points, and that was worth 14 points, which we scored 0, the total number of points overall that the application scored was higher than the total number of points scored by the lowest winning grantee. So if we just had a few capacity points, HUD requires that you actually score points in all of the different categories, including capacity. So that's why we weren't scored, even though we had higher points in all the other areas. I know it's a complex issue, it's very technical, but just wanted to sort of clear that up. So what about this year? HUD doesn't use the same NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, every year. They always tweak it and change it. So this year they changed the capacity points. Last year it was 10 points to lead the planning process, and you could count your planning coordinator of that experience. This year you can't. It's only get 8 points for those who are the applicant and co-applicant. So this year we're going to rely on, for the 8 points, the experience of the Sanford Housing Authority and the City of Sanford, which is the co-applicant. And then they have another new category this year for planning partners. So I'll go over that in a minute. So when we look to the Sanford Housing Authority for capacity, we're going to talk about their experience in going through the process of demoing, relocating residents, getting approval from HUD to do that, demoing the buildings, working with the community repeatedly in sort of bringing them up to date on what's been happening. And 2 years ago, there was a planning effort where we reached out to a lot of stakeholders at individual surveys, interviews and we actually developed a number of redevelopment alternatives for the 5 Sanford Housing Authority sites that sit in the middle of the Goldsboro neighborhood. So we're going to use that as a capacity example for Sanford. For the city, we're going to use a number of examples. I think your Imagine Sanford, which is that visioning process, where you did outreach to the community. We're going to look at that as one example. We're going to also look at your CDBG process. You've got a CDBG advisory board, and you do extensive outreach to residents in the community to get them involved in making decisions about that. And we'll also potentially look at the success that you have had with the downtown CRA, community redevelopment area, which has been very successful, and now you have a new plan for a catalytic site there as well. For the partners experience, where we get up to 4 points, we're going to look at a number of different partners here. We'll look at EJP again. We've worked on 13 planning efforts across the country and on 5 implementation grants where they were awarded $30 million each. We'll use our capacity. We'll look at the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council and their 2-year experience doing the sustainability grant, and had extensive community outreach there. We'll talk about that, and they're a key partner in this plan. We'll also look at the county potentially with their development of the CRA area, the 1792 CRA area, which overlaps with our neighborhood. And there's also a developer's experience that we'll be talking about, and probably take a look at the Front Porch Council in terms of their outreach and engagement with the community as sort of key planning partners. We'll talk about those in terms of the experience of the planning partners. So what else has changed since we last met to talk about this choice? First of all, the Housing Authority has procured a developer for Reading Gardens. This is a site that, as you know, is not in the choice neighborhood. It's another site. And they've procured a developer who has submitted a low-income housing tax credit application to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. And I believe Ms. Bryant was here to talk about that when it was being submitted. Secondly, they procured another developer to actually redevelop the 5 sites in the middle of the Goldsboro neighborhood. That developer is recently on board. It's Arlington Properties, and they have brought to the table as part of their team Looney, Ricks, Kiss, which are very well-known, experienced master planners and architects in the Southeast region. They actually have an office in Celebration, but their main office is out of Memphis. And they've also put on the team CPH, which is a well-known local engineering firm that works here and is very familiar with the city and its business. All of the properties have been demolished. Last time there were 6 units still standing. Those have now been demolished. And the SHA office is now co-located with the Front Porch office to sort of give a better relationship with the community. The HUD NOFA has also changed. I mentioned to you sort of the change in the point system, and I've got a detailed breakdown of those changes if you want to see those. They've also, this year, remember last time we applied for $500,000? This year we'll be applying for $2 million. $500,000 for planning, an additional potential $1.5 million for early neighborhood improvements. It's all part of the same application. The highest ranked applicants or applications actually received the $500,000 plus the $1.5 million, which you can start implementing after about 18 months. for neighborhood things like improving the rehab the houses, or improve beautification projects and things like that, things that you can visually see. And then the next ranked applicants receive $500,000 just for the planning. So there's a potential here to actually end up with $2 million, depending on how we score. This year they also did something they didn't do last year, is they're giving a lot of points actually for the targeted choice neighborhoods being in a neighborhood that is already targeted as an investment area, like a CRA, like a TIF, or a CDBG neighborhood stabilization area. We're going to argue that you've got an overlapping CRA with the 1792. We're going to argue that the CDBG target area, which is exactly the Goldsboro outline, which I'll show you in a minute, is that. And then there's a green district in the middle, which is specifically targeted for, I think, remediation, which I've been talking to Russ about. And then finally, you have to identify a doing well planning project, something that engages the community while you're planning. You also want to see evidence that the community is engaged in coming together and working on something that's visible, whether it's a community garden or rehab of some retail structures or a paint project or whatever, or a gazebo, things we talked about here. They want to see that actually in the application. So the other differences I mentioned were the boundaries. Last year we went as far west as Airport Drive. This year, in order to speak to the targeting a neighborhood that is already in an investment area, we have brought back the western boundary to Persimmon Street on the west. The northern boundary is actually First Street. The eastern boundary is going to be French Avenue, or what is known as US 17-92. And the southern boundary is going to be 18th Street, except for that little notch out for the school that's down there. So we're really focusing on this as the target area in order to chase those points. So what also is different this year is I think you have more partners coming to the table with commitments. Last year the city pledged $250,000 upon the award of a grant. This year, in addition to ideally the city recommitting those funds, just pledging them should the grant be awarded, the Sanford Housing Authority is also tentatively, has to go to board approval, pledged $100,000 of their funds to pay for pre-development activities on the site to get ready for housing redevelopment. In addition, the developer who has been procured is also pledging an additional $100,000 for pre-development activities. So these are serious monies for moving the housing portion of the planning effort forward. We're also looking to the city of Sanford for some parallel planning efforts that will inform the Choice Neighborhoods planning effort. And these actually can be counted as supporting commitments as well. And then we're also looking to the health department. As many of you know, the health department, I think it's the state health department in Seminole County, is doing a substantial sort of health study of health needs in the area. So we're looking at that study to inform our planning study as well, and that would be a supporting effort. So overall, we would match the $500,000 of the Choice Neighborhoods dollars with more than $500,000 of actual cash and supporting commitments, which gives the full points. The planning structure, this is a very elaborate process. It's a 2-year planning process. It needs to be inclusive, it needs to be collaborative, and most of all, it needs to be transparent. So we have tentatively designed a planning structure where the lead applicant is the Sanford Housing Authority, the co-applicant is the city, as I said before, And Orlando Housing Authority is actually the management agent for the grant. The planning coordinator will advise and oversee the day-to-day planning activities. There will be an executive committee of decision makers that makes final decisions about what goes on in the plan. That would be the Sanford Housing Authority board chair, the Orlando Housing Authority executive director, CEO, president, and ideally the mayor from the city as the executive committee making final decisions about this, about the plan as it's completed. We also recommend having a steering committee, sort of the leaders in the community most invested in this neighborhood, who would advise and steer the planning process with input from your ongoing West Side Community Meeting, which meets monthly, and input from the CDBG Advisory Board as well. We've listed a number of key partners in the steering committee. We're going to add a few more. We welcome your input. If we're missing anybody who you think is key to the process, who should be at the table. And then we have a number of, and the list is growing, of stakeholders who will also participate. And as I said, that number is growing. The public school system, Front Porch, they're also on the steering committee, who will be divided up into working groups to create strategies for different parts of the plan. Some of the working groups that we've seen other communities use to put together their plan is a working group on health and wellness, parks, recreation and open space, workforce development, early education and secondary education. Public safety is always a huge one. In all of these communities, public safety tends to be the #1 issue. So we would see that as a separate working group, probably ideally facilitated by the police department. So we see breaking down into a number of sort of working groups that would, throughout the process of about 12 to 18 months, help develop strategies for addressing the identified problems after we've done a detailed needs assessment. The next steps, we're working with all the partners to finalize the letters and get their commitments. HUD requires that they be firmly committed. There's a West Side community meeting on January 28th where the Housing Authority has invited all of the previously relocated Sanford housing households to come back and be part of this meeting to see what's going on and resubmission of
When
the
is that?
application.
When's that meeting?
Thursday.
Thursday, yeah. And then we will submit the application no later than February 9th. And one of the questions that people ask, well, what if you don't apply for a planning grant? Can we just go and do something else and figure out, can we make it a park? Can we sell it to a developer and just build private housing? And unfortunately, that's not always in the cards. Actually, HUD holds a deed of trust on all of the Housing Authority land. And they require that land be used for affordable housing purposes or in some other way support affordable housing in the community. So to some extent, there is a requirement to seriously look at replacing some of the housing in this neighborhood. Not all, but some of it. That's very quick. I apologize. I know that you've got a full schedule here, but I'm open to questions. Any concerns that you have?
Questions?
Okay, so there's a difference between an action grant and an implementation grant?
Yes, the action grant that they have here is for $1.5 million. And it's a smaller chunk of implementation dollars, just devoted to neighborhood improvements. So even if you do get action grant monies for $1.5 million, it does not make you ineligible for, at a later date, applying for implementation dollars, which are now $30 million per grant.
Okay, and do we have a budget for the planning part of it?
We do have a budget. I don't have it with me. We're still working with the Housing Authority on that.
How much? You know what the total is on that?
It's 500 plus the commitments that were made here, so close to $1 million. But as you can tell from the,
So is the budget being based on how much money is available or what needs
no,
to be done?
it's actually what needs to be done, and the budget is tight, given all of the different activities that are going on, paying for the Regional Planning Council, ideally, to do a lot of the work in the neighborhood, paying for, as you saw, there's upwards of $200,000 of that going to the developers, architect and engineers, and the developer to, and some of that's the developer's money to actually do the planning for the financials, submit applications where needed.
Okay.
It's also, HUD requires environmental assessments to be done as part of the planning process. Phase one's at a minimum, we might go further than that on the,
So just the plan is going to cost about $1 million?
yes. But that's a very detailed plan that moves particularly the housing piece along at a fairly detailed level with substantial community input.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
When I was reading this, I was believing this was the exact same grant we were turned down for last year. Am I correct?
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
It's, the HUD has changed some of the criteria, but, as Ms. F explained earlier, our application scored higher than the application, the least funded application. So, but there was some mix-up about who should sign what. So that was the problem with the application. But the notice of funding availability has changed, so it requires us to change the application.
So this isn't the original choice neighborhood grant, but it's still a choice neighborhood grant.
Yes. And this year, I don't know if you caught this, but there, in addition to the 500,000, you are also potentially eligible for 1.5 million in action activities.
Sanford?
Yeah, earlier you had indicated the housing authorities, and maybe this is to the housing authority, selected 2 developers for the sites. What are they doing?
I'll leave that to-
The developer for Reading Gardens submitted the tax credit application.
Okay.
And we're working with the other 5 sites, Arlington, we're working on a master developer agreement with them, so we're negotiating that now. We already have a term sheet for the first developer, and we will go after other funds.
Okay, so I guess that's part of my question. If you don't get this, so the housing authority's already identified developers to develop its properties. And if you don't get this, then what's the next step?
Then we would have to continue to plan and come up with a process where the whole neighborhood is involved. It will take us a lot longer, but we need to make sure that we have some buy-in from the neighborhood that will be affected. Now, I think with the choice neighborhoods, it gives the city an opportunity to plan more than just the sites. Without the choice neighborhoods, we have to focus on planning for the sites because we don't have the monies to plan for the entire neighborhood. But we would prefer that the planning process include all of every household that's in the boundaries and all of the entities, rather than just planning for what will we rebuild and getting input on that.
So the developers you've brought on board are to work on planning. They're not developers that are going to be doing any building at this time.
No, they would do building, but we haven't decided on the plan yet. We have a concept for what we would like to see, but we don't have architectural drawings, we don't have neighborhood designs, all of those, and that's what the planning process would help. But we would rather plan for the entire neighborhood than just plan for what will go back on those sites that are vacant. Without these funds, we would plan more for what will we put back here just on those 5 sites.
The total concept I thought of the choice neighborhood grant too was that it did some other planning for health,
Public safety.
public safety,
Education.
recreation, education, jobs.
Yes. Yes, so it's a more comprehensive plan than just planning for the reuse of the land. And it would be a neighborhood plan, I assume something like what you all have done with your revision.
Okay.
Imagine.
What percentage of agencies, or, I mean, it's not just cities, but whatever, that get the planning grant and go through the planning process, what percentage of those get implementation grants?
Not a lot. I think there've been 50-plus planning grants to date over 5 years. There have been 17 implementation grant awards. And the first round of implementation grants, 5 of them didn't have a planning period because the program was new. And they very much regretted that they didn't have an 18 to 24 months planning process, because you got to plan anyway. It's something of this scale when you're doing mixed income housing.
So, go ahead.
No, I don't.
Well, I'm still just concerned, $1 million to plan something, and then what about a 40% chance of an implementation grant for it?
Well, the interesting thing about that, and I see where you're going, is that many of those planning grantees actually had such detailed plans that they were able to go on and implement most of their plans because they were ready to pursue other dollars without getting the choice dollars. So they've gone on to get other funding for the housing. They've chased EDA, federal grants for economic development opportunities. They've built incubator, kitchens and things like that. They actually, with a plan in place, they now can start pursuing funding for specific components of that, rather than this random year to year, let's throw a few dollars here at that, let's throw a few dollars here at that, is that you've got a plan. It may take 10 years to implement, but you actually got a framework that at the end of the day is transformative.
Well, here's where I'm really headed with this, and then I'll be quiet for a while, is we don't need 250,000 as leverage for the 500,000, right?
You do.
So 25% leverage is required for 4 full points.
Yes.
So 25% of 500,000.
It's actually 25% of the 2 million.
Okay.
Last year it was 1-for-1, 500,000 for, right, so
So,
we're still back at the same
well,
point.
you need to leverage the 1.5
Yes.
million. I would like us to say we'll leverage 125,000 of planning and 125,000 of action or implementation, so that we're not putting all of that money just to a plan. We're putting some of that money to actually something getting done. That's where I was headed with that.
HUD would only count the 125 that you pledged towards planning. They don't count implementation dollars at this point. They want you to support the planning effort. So the
125,000 would be 25% of the 500,000.
Well, we're looking for $500,000 worth of cash or supporting commitments to leverage the $500,000 to get maximum points.
Okay, but maximum points are 25%, unless I'm reading this wrong.
Of the 2 million. So they've calculated it differently this year because it's 25% of 2 million.
So we would still be putting in the 250,000. I'm just saying half of it would have to be spent on action items rather than planning items.
But you're saying that they wouldn't count.
They don't count.
Action part for
The
the
fact,
plans.
yeah, it doesn't count on the action part.
And if we get a plan, we can move to action.
Yeah,
Whether with or without HUD or federal grants,
Yes.
right?
yes.
Letters must state that the committed funds will be set aside for action activities that will be defined through a community planning process and approved by HUD.
For the action activities, but it won't leverage the planning.
I'm leveraging both.
Yeah.
I just think $1 million for planning is just.
Why do you think that they made a decision that $1 million was needed for planning? Why do you think?
Well,
they
she went
decided-
through some of the items, but I'm looking at what others, I mean, other grants, most of them are not 500,000 for the planning, most of them are less than 500,000.
Okay, but,
Not choice.
not choice.
Most of them are the 500. There's some that are less than that. The first year in 2010 of the choice grants, they gave 250,000 in a grant to be supplemented, to be leveraged by 250,000 of local dollars. They immediately increased it the following year because of the amount of planning that's needed. You're really actually doing pre-development activities. It's not like a plan that you're used to, sort of, vision and, goals and objectives and such. This is a very detailed plan about what are the specific strategies, who's going to implement them, where are you going to get the funding, and how are you going to measure success. What are the measurable indicators that you're going to use as a community to measure whether or not you're successful in the transformation efforts? How many people get jobs? What's the value to increase in property value to the because of the investment in the neighborhood?
If you're successful with $200,000 from the city and you're awarded the grant, I mean, what kind of benefit would that be for the city?
First of all, I think that what happens to this almost 50 acres in the middle of this neighborhood is essential to particularly the downtown, but to the future of the city. And I think that running an open, transparent planning process with the community, everyone involved in the community, about what goes back is very important to the health and welfare of just the community spirit. I think there's been numerous studies done on the economic input of redeveloping housing, affordable housing in the area. It first started with the Hope 6 program, and they discovered with some economists doing research that 7-fold public and private investment went into the neighborhoods surrounding those sites that were redeveloped as mixed income housing and as affordable housing. So the goal here also is not to just replace the public housing that's there, but rather to see what you can do to do mixed income housing, which I don't think you could just as of right, without making neighborhood improvements, develop mixed income housing in this neighborhood. So if you really want true market rate as a component of this site, you're going to have to look at the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's what this allows you to do. You have to do market studies for the residential. You have to do price points for the market. You have to do economic development studies that support any investment in the neighborhood or leverage.
If you're successful, how much money would that bring into the city? How much, if you're successful?
That's hard to say, not knowing what the plan is and, the tax implications
You
of.
mean successful
Of
getting the
investment.
grant or
Yeah,
successful
successful in getting the
implementing
grant.
the plan?
The planning grant is $500,000, and it comes with potentially another 1.5 million for neighborhood improvements, which is real activity, visible activity in the neighborhood.
I think the most important thing to look at, Commissioner, too, is that we get to reshape this together. So it's not like the past when it was there when we got here. Now we can shape how it looks.
I have no issue with doing the plan and that. I just think $1 million is a lot of money. And that I would like us to be committing money to implementation, not just to planning. And based on my read of the NOFA, 125,000 match for the 500,000 gets full points, and the other 125,000 we can pledge to the action. We're still pledging the same 250 to the same 2 million. But we're saying we're not going to put all 250 of our money into the planning. We're going to put half of it into some action item.
Let me go back and check that on the leverage stuff. We'd really have to cut back on some of the activities that were planned. Part of the, as I said, the money is going to the Regional Planning Council for work in the neighborhood. I think one of the things we really want to spend some dollars on is building the capacity of the front porch. Because after the planning is gone, one of the key implementation efforts there, the organization, will be the front porch, who's very involved now, you know, even now with youth engagement, after school tutoring and programming, community gardens. Yelda?
Well, I see the 250 as an investment that will leverage the potential of 1.5 million. And that's pledged only if the grant is awarded.
Only
So
if the 500,000 is awarded, not
Yes.
if the whole 2 million is awarded.
Well, you don't get to the 2 million unless you get to the 500,000. So it's if we don't pledge, if the city doesn't show its support for the 250,000, the chances of Sanford's application are not that good at all. So this is kind of the decision that you're making for whether the grant will be successful. And it's a pledge. If the grant is not awarded, then the city is not out of any money.
Hasn't lost anything at all.
And the city can still pledge the 125,000 toward implementation of something, toward the sites. We look forward to that.
That's 300,000 there.
Yeah, we can always, you can pledge the 125,000 for the implementation of what's there for just the reuse of the land.
Well,
I get what Art's saying. I mean, we've been down this path 3 years, 2? Is this second year?
This is the second one.
Second year. But it seems like a lot longer than that.
Well, we made conscious decisions in the past that the application would not have scored well. So we advised the city not to spend the money.
Right.
And it's not unusual in grants like this, Choice Neighborhoods. I know Tampa applied for Choice Neighborhood 3 times before they got theirs. So it's not unusual to have to stand in line and wait your turn. But if you get out of line, then you start all over again.
Well, I think we need to, and I totally understand what you're saying, but my personal opinion is we need to do whatever we need to do to make the planning as successful as possible, and then we can make some decisions on the backside of it for the ultimate 2 million. I mean, the 500, yes, it's trying to get there, but the ultimate goal is the 2 million, and you are the, you all know how to get there, and you're telling us how to get there, and we've had the money pledged on the side to get to this, and we all know that we have to get there at some point in time, or find plan B. And I note that, if we don't get the planning grant, what can be done with the property, and I want to go down that path again of the what if, because like you said, this is smack dab in the middle of a neighborhood. We get a lot of questions as to what we're doing, how we're doing, and going with this and to have a plan is vital for us to move forward. So I'm on board with with doing whatever we have to do to make this successful. And if you're telling me that's the 250, I mean, that's where I'm going to stand on it.
And it would come out of the general fund?
But not until next year, right? Once the award period starts next year.
It's at least 6 to 8 months after the application is submitted.
It's for all intents and purposes, it's after September.
Yeah.
And we've had the money set, we've set the money aside, so.
And actually, you can commit it, you don't have to have it all up front. You could do it over the grant period.
Can some of it be, can any of the commitment be in kind, or does it all have to be cash?
It can be cash, or it can be supporting commitments, like you're already doing planning anyway, that will help. It's like doing the health study. That will help inform the Choice Neighborhoods planning process. They no longer allow in kinds. Folks are saying, you can use my office space to have meetings in, I'll give you staff time. They don't allow that to count. Unless it's above and beyond sort of attending regular meetings.
I support the efforts also because this is a great opportunity for us to redevelop a depressed area. And I'm confident that if we do not get funds to do that, that the city of Sanford is not going to come up with $2 million out of its budget to redevelop that area. So I support any time the federal government or the state or found donors or what have you is willing to provide funds to help redevelop an area. I'm 100% for it. And especially since it's predicated on whether the grant is awarded. So it's not like taking a risk on losing $250,000 because all it is a pledge. So, I think that it is incumbent upon the city officials and the city leaders to understand the need, how great the need is, to support this effort. Because long after we're gone, the problems are going to still be out there if we don't do something. And somebody is going to have to eventually, do something to redevelop the area. So when the Chamber of Commerce bring people in on a bus to try to get businesses to relocate here, that they don't have to gerrymander coming through Goldsboro and Georgetown. I don't blame them. And like I told them, I was on the board. I don't blame you about not bringing 400 or 500, 50 or 60 prospective and big employers, Fortune 500 employers, through Goldsboro and Georgetown. So I would hope that, we here at the city would come to the conclusion that we have a couple of councils in the city of Sanford. One on the east side, one on the west side. Okay? And that we need to get rid of the cancer so you can really say we are really a friendly city, a city that embraces meeting the needs of all communities. So I just think that it's time. It's just time. Now is the time for us to embrace this. So please try to find it within your heart and in your mind to understand that there's a great need for it. This will be doing something great for your citizens that Mr. Bonaparte always say that we're concerned about all the citizens and their communities and that type of thing. Okay.
And we all said amen. Sound like you were just at church yesterday.
You want to really know what I think?
Well, Well, I think we were all really gung ho for it last year, and you know, and very, very disappointed that we didn't get it. At that time, we had our federal lobbyists and had even asked them to assist. We no longer. And well,
Yes, they did.
yes, they did.
Yes, they did.
Yes, they did. But
All right.
we didn't get it, and the reason they didn't get it, Val Marie will have to tell you, it was some kind of.
She went through why we didn't.
Okay, sorry. So we don't have our federal lobbyists this year, but you know, hopefully you can take their place. But we can all, you know, because we were very excited about it, and I totally agree with what you said about you have to apply 2 or 3 times. You know, sometimes you got to do that to get in college or get a job or whatever. So I understand completely what Commissioner Woodruff is saying, but I really don't think we can be successful over there without the type of plan that you all are talking about. I just don't think it's anything we can plan ourselves.
And by the way, could you give us copies, make copies of that, what you just have here? That's a synopsis. Do y'all have some for all of us? Yes. When you gave your presentation, huh?
You want one, Mr. Colbert?
Sure.
Looks like there's tons.
Okay.
And when it's completed, I would like to copy of the planning budget so I can better understand.
Sure, yes. I know it sounds like a lot, but a lot of it goes into the engagement process.
It sounds like
Technical studies.
we're going to be intimately, I know you want the mayor to sit on the planning council, but it sounds like we're, as a commission, going to be somewhat intimately involved.
You will.
I think what she was, I assume what she was meant, he would be the spokesman in the sense of all 5 of us would not be there on the committee, but we would have just much voice as the mayor has. And so the mayor's a commissioner just like we are. But he is our leader. But he does speak in behalf of us, so you will have the opportunity.
We'll all be intimately involved, and I actually kind of excited about it. You're the lady that came down and we had the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been here before.
Yeah, Mrs. Epps, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I was late. I had an orthopedic surgeon appointment. I have a bad finger problem.
Okay. All right. Of course, we'll have to vote on it tonight, but I think you can kind of hear the direction that we're going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But don't leave, don't say that you don't need to come to the meeting. They don't need to come?
I don't think we need to know.
No, I don't think so.
Sit through all that.
Okay now,
Sit through all that pain.
okay. I don't want anybody to get amnesia when we get down there.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just take just a few moments to thank the city and all its departments on behalf of the Martin Luther King Steering Committee. We really had a great weekend. And, you know, we can't do this without y'all. And I'm proud, you know, I'm proud to represent the committee as well as proud to represent the city on our efforts. So thank you very much, everybody, for all your help.
Well, thanks for all you do.
I just do a little bit.
You work a full-time job. You work 2 full-time jobs. You work a full-time job and you volunteer work.
Thank you, and thanks for all you do. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
City financials.
Yes, we have our quarterly financial report for the City Commission. We're calling our Finance Director, Ms. Lindsay.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. This is the 4th quarter ending September 30th, 2015 financials. Just wanted to let you know that you're aware this is not the final numbers. We do have a period 13, which audit work gets done in, which is not included on here. I will give you a little snapshot of what that looks like. You go to page 3, the general fund. The end of September, we had an excess of 1.1. We are currently, unless there are audit adjustments made after we're done booking, looking at a $600,000 revenue over expenditures for the close of 2015. Unless there's any questions on the general fund, I'll move on.
Is the payment from the Hardy Avenue Harvey, is any of that included in this yet?
Oh, yes. Hardy Avenue is already included in all of this, yes. Okay, move on to page 4, the fund balance analysis. Currently, we're sitting with 2.2 million. And that's not going to change. Excess over 25% reserves. It is the shortfall of our policy currently. However, that's not going to change. We did have a 600,000 excess, as I said. However, with the bonuses and the carry forwards, we're eating away a little over 300,000 of that. And the increase in the 25% amount eats away the rest of it. So we're still sitting at about 2.2 million in excess.
What should it be?
2.2. It's about the same. It's not really changing.
You said it was under the,
You're on page 4.
Under policy though?
right.
Yeah, current. And
Yes.
what's our excess over the 25% is 3 million. Is what our current policy is, which is the 2.5 million for emergencies and the 500,000 for contingencies. So we are short of our policy.
I see.
Okay. I'm gonna move on to pensions, unless there's any questions on any other statements that you might have individually. Our 2 pensions, as of the end of September, the police pension lost 530,000. They are going to end up the end of the year at a loss of 200,000. Fire changed a little bit. Their end of the year loss gain was 911,000 versus the 939.
Wait, say that again?
The police pension right here on the as of the end of September had a loss of 530, almost 531,000. They're actually ending up with a $200,000 loss versus the 531 shown.
What do you mean ending up? Ending up at 930 or ending up at end of year?
End of year, all audit adjustments made, correct, $200,000 loss. And fire will end up with a gain of $911,000. We are actually in the middle of our audit. Our auditors started today. They will be here for the next 2.5 weeks. We do have an issue this year in that FRS, we do have a new GASB. It's called GASB 68, which is recording the pension liabilities on our books. Currently, FRS is not on our books. Police and fire are not on our books. So GASB 68 requires us to put that in our CAFR this year. FRS has not released the numbers yet that we need in order to do that. We did get information from them today that it might come out in the middle of February, and our audit is due to the state by the end of March. So we may be looking at requesting an extension this year on our CAFR filing, but that's because of the new GASB laws coming out that we have to comply with. We're looking at, with the FRS, with the numbers that they had for last year, about a $6 million liability that's going to be added to our books just for FRS.
Just for FRS.
And then we have to add the police and fire liability as well.
Consistently, the fire does better than the.
Not always.
Not
no.
always.
The police had more retirees as the reason for their loss this year. Any other questions?
Any questions for Cynthia?
Yeah, I think I have the answer to this.
Good.
The net change in assets of the pension doesn't really relate to the net change in liabilities.
Correct. We use actuary liabilities too, which is a different animal altogether, so.
Okay, that's what
And Cynthia, have you looked at the Mayfair books?
Mm-hmm.
It may just be a flip of their numbers, but they go from administration, they crank up $200,000 in administration for actual year 12. And then their maintenance drops to 222 from 515. They're doing better. It's doing better on the loss per se, but
Right.
I don't know what the.
You do have to remember the prior year was a startup year for them. That was the first year they actually started doing Mayfair, and they took over October of that year. So
October of 2014.
2013. Yes, because this would be, the current year is October 2014 through September 30, 2015. So the prior year is when they actually started. It was October of 2013. So that prior year information, we have it on here as comparable, but it's really startup, so.
Okay. Yeah. It just kind of shocked me that makes sense. Because bleeding through administration while we're suffering the loss. Okay. Any other questions for Cynthia? Thank you,
You
Cynthia.
have a question for Norton? Have we started discussions with our unions regarding,
We have discussions about discussions with the unions.
we're having discussions about discussions? Okay.
Well,
Discussions
First
are
step.
continuing.
Okay.
You mentioned something about the Gatsby, new rules.
Gatsby 68. Basically, the city's financial statements, the CAFR that comes out each year, does not have the pension liability. What the city would have to pay if everybody retired today or everybody cashed out. They don't have that on our books. The new Gatsby rulings now states that we have to report that on our books. And so this year we have to include that, and we have to wait for the FRS to give us numbers for the FRS people. We do have the police and fire numbers, but we're waiting on the FRS for their numbers. So it may delay our CAFR a little bit this year.
But it won't have a negative impact on anything.
It does, in the bottom line, our bottom line's gonna go down. The FRS, the citywide bottom line is going down a little over $6 million. Police and fire, I don't really remember the numbers, so I can't say them off the top of my head. Our bottom line does look worse. But in reality, it's no change, but on the books, you will see it.
Okay.
It's
I-
another question on
Oh,
that part. You said, something about the police pension. When are we supposed to address that seriously?
Well, my understanding was it's in this next contract. Because I thought where we were at, which would implement
And I-
next
yeah.
October.
I don't mean to underestimate, maybe I should say there's serious discussions about having discussions.
next October being 16 or 17?
The next time you wake up and it's October.
16.
You said a serious discussion about it.
What kind of way to answer a question is that?
Which Friday?
Does that mean that you might not have a serious discussion?
No, we are. We're having, we just got some additional information, actuarial information that we're going through, and it is our intention to be meeting with the unions. Yeah.
Now, is there another year on the existing police contract? Or
No, I think we're starting negotiations. There's nothing for salaries for next year, so that has to be discussed.
Right, but the base contract still has a year for police, is that right?
I believe so.
One opener. Okay. CIP.
Commission had asked regarding the use of reserves for capital improvement projects. We did present to you a list, and it was requested to have additional information, so that information is provided to you in a breakdown. I do want to be cognizant that our finance director is not recommending that we use these funds for capital project, but to remain in the reserve. You already see that we're below the city commission's policy on reserves. However, the commission did request information, so if we were to use what was 2 million, now 1.8 million, how would that be used? And that is what is presented to the commission for options.
And just an update on the list, the summary list that was provided for the 1.8. The 150,000 has now been covered under our current budget, as Bilal was able to negotiate and them including everything in the current price versus adding a price to that to finish it.
For what was that now, Cindy?
For the air conditioner replacement.
all the items?
No, just this one.
Well, I know it was Commissioner Woodruff that sort of brought this up, and I did drive around and go out and look at some of these parks. In fact, I guess I should be embarrassed to admit some of these parks I've never heard of. They're everywhere. But I did go and look at some of them, and you know, it's a real conundrum for me because you know, aesthetically, you know, how this city looks, how this city maintains its city properties, how this city maintains its recreation areas. You know, I just think it's a huge reflection on the city as a whole. And I have to tell you, some of this stuff looked a lot worse than I thought it was going to when I went out to see it. And I just although I understand completely what Ms. Lindsay's saying, I do think that some of this has got to be done. I really do. I just don't see how we can not. You know, we're going through all this planning down here, and you know, we're trying to we're going to go to referendum with the tax abatement to try and lure business and industry here, and we've got to be able to say, you know, it's got to be more, I guess, than just Paw Park and Fort Mellon Park. We've got to, you know, like Velma said, you know, the gerrymander, you know, Goldsboro and Georgetown, but they're going to have to gerrymander a lot of other places too. So that's kind of my opinion on that. And then my other opinion is, if the, you know, and I have no reason to think otherwise, you know, but if staff says the air conditioner is as precarious and as old and as likely to fail as it is.
Well, I'll just pay for that one.
Totally. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Totally.
we are good with that because we already had 550,000 in last year's budget.
Oh.
So we are good with that.
Okay, I thought you still were going to need some money. Okay.
We did, but we were able to renegotiate that and we can do it all now.
And won't a new air conditioner actually ultimately in the end be cheaper to operate?
It will save, yeah, there will be some cost savings, yes.
So I kind of feel like
And we do have some pictures of some of the parks if you want to look at them.
Yeah, I'm going through, and you know, when it says basketball courts are fading and cracking, maybe we can put that off a year. But when I read basketball court has damaged areas that are potential trip hazards.
right, and the substrates
You know,
disintegrating.
I think the heavily damaged ones we need to go ahead and fix. Standards and poles are bent, rusted, and damaged.
Tetanus shots are coming.
Basketball court is heavily damaged due to tree roots. I think those we need to fix.
Yeah, right there. Pavilion footers rusted through the supports. Well, the whole thing could come down, right?
Potentially.
think improvements in those areas are long overdue. And as Patty said, I do feel that there's a negative reflection when it comes to the image of the city. You gotta think about it, not just downtown parks, because people do ride
Yeah.
around.
Yeah, you really do. And the more they're rehabbed and kept up, the more they'll be used, and the more they'll keep kids off the street if they're using them.
Cynthia, if we go to the, just verbally, if we go to the 25% as a minimum, what's that leave in the open arena for? That leaves $2 million?
Yeah, 2.2.
What do you think? I know you.
Don't want to spend the money, but that's pretty bad shape.
Yeah, I think if we were to do it, first we have to come to grips in terms with reducing ourselves back to the 22 or 25%, whatever we think. I do not think that it's advisable for us to go out and sign a contract for $2 million to replace all of our park equipment at once.
No.
And all this stuff at once, but I think phased in, you take the most significant parts via our Parks and Recs guy, or saying this is an immediate need, and we work into it, at $200,000 or $300,000 a year, and hopefully with the coming back of the economy or more things coming online, we put it in place, we put it off to the side. We know that this is what the usage are going to be, but we're not jumping all at once. And then 2 years down the road, if we have a significant problem or a significant hit, we've still got $1.4 million sitting there that we can pull ourselves back and say, hey, we understand that park's not great, or this piece of equipment needs to be replaced, but we've got flooded streets or whatever it may be, and we've got to wait for FEMA to come in.
Yeah, exactly. I think exactly. But I think repair anything that's a potential liability hazard, because now it's on the public record that we've discussed some of this, and Art used the word trip hazard, and I talked about the footers, and so anything that potentially some poor little child could get hurt on, I think has to be fixed as soon as possible.
Well, and I was going to ask, in terms of the courts and the rest of the park stuff, can we even get it all done in 1 year?
Not if you did it all at one time, no. It would have to be a big project. You could potentially save money if you did them all at one time, but I don't even know if the contractor could get them all completed.
So we're not talking about a 5-year period, maybe a 2-year period? Is that what we're talking about, commissioners?
2 years way too quick. And even if you went over 5 years, it's basically $400,000 a year that you're committing, unless something else comes up, to public work, parks, and amenities.
It's almost
That's a lot of money each year.
Yeah, it's almost an ongoing, it's a real problem, because it's almost an ongoing thing, because like you said, it's a ton of money each year. By the time you get to the 5th year in the last park, you've got the one that was done first 5 years down the road. It's going to need.
It's like,
Just so
It's a cycle.
Well, Robert, what, like over there, let's just take that one right there. To do that tennis court and that basketball court, what are you looking at?
These are in such bad condition that they need to be completely rebuilt.
Yep, I mean, let's use that as the basis and just start.
That one's
all-
They've got
85,000.
his 85,000.
That's both courts.
I just want to mention, the reason we got to that point is that this has been on the CIP every year, but we just didn't have the funding to do it.
Right.
So we've been just doing, just fixing it, doing some patches on it, and over the last 20 years, we have come to a point where they have to be replaced or just closed off.
Well, that, and some of these courts are, up to 40 years old
Oh, yeah.
without having been replaced in all
Right.
that time.
So
So
they-
that's part of the problem, it's just really age difference.
So,
I know every,
Is Chase, did we decide to do something with the courts over at Chase already? Tennis courts?
It all depends on, what kind of funding we got. Right now, we've got them,
Because those aren't, I don't see those in here.
right now, we've got it back up in usable condition. What we have are flooding issues around the court that's causing problems. Realistically, it really needs to be rebuilt.
But that one's not, it's not in here. It's not just that I'm not seeing it, but that's not in this.
Correct.
And also, what's the conditional one in Fort Mellon?
Well, Fort Mellon really needs to be rebuilt, but the question was if we go ahead with the amphitheater phase 2, that goes away. So it's kind of a floater in there, but people are still using that court. And really, we should be shutting it down.
I mean, without getting in a lot of trouble and getting, somebody mad, let me say this again, because I tried to broach on this the last time. If you really took an inventory of every park and every amenity in the park, which is kind of close to what is here in the workbook, and you looked at, like Jenkins Circle Park and the tennis courts, does anyone in that neighborhood use it, play tennis, want to play tennis? Or, I keep going back to, would we almost be better off with dividing, taking the city and kind of sectioning it out on a map and having a true recreation park maybe in every section, and then some of these smaller parks, pulling out the courts and just a green space park. Do we need to really almost, I realize that parks are platted and they have to stay platted, they have to stay parks, but do we really need a tennis court in Jenkins Park, or can the people that use that one, are we trying to maintain, and we're not able to maintain, obviously, too many amenities and too many parks, where we'd be better consolidating the amenities in certain parks, in certain areas, and pulling out things like that, bringing in a whatever, and scraping it up and putting down grass.
Bulldozer.
Thank you.
well, I mean, it's,
Do I make sense when
Yeah,
I'm
I mean, that
yeah,
makes sense.
it's not a bad point, because when you look at like Jenkins and Pinehurst, they're probably a 5-minute bike ride from each other.
Pinecrest Park?
Yeah.
Now, Pinecrest has tennis courts, but it doesn't have basketball.
Pinecrest there's also a softball field there. There's there used to be a backstop there at one point.
No,
Pinecrest, Pinehurst.
Pinehurst.
Pinehurst, yeah.
Yeah, Pinehurst has the ball field on one side, and then we have a small playground area with the tennis court.
That's one of them. Those two are,
Jenkins and Pinehurst are close
They're
together.
a little ways, they're across 1792, several blocks.
No. What's
Jenkins is
across?
out by
Jenkins-
Sonora.
Down from
Jenkins
Circle.
is right off of Airport.
Correct.
And what's on the north side of Airport?
Pinehurst.
That's
I mean,
Pinehurst.
Pinecrest.
Yeah, because the elementary school's right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Pinecrest and, yes, that's right.
Yeah, Pinecrest just has the tennis courts, it doesn't have basketball.
Right.
Do we have a sense of how much these things would get used?
We don't have any studies or anything on it. I can tell you that since the net was taken down on this one, we haven't received a phone call.
See, that's,
Now, we have been getting increased calls for like doing pickleball in areas.
Doing what?
Pickleball?
Pickleball,
Like half
which is,
court.
it's like half court of tennis. It's,
Well, and
it's the new phase that's coming in, but we've been getting a lot of requests for it. Roadview Park, we just redid the 3 tennis courts there. We added a pickleball to one of the courts so that it could be played there.
I just think we got too many amenities and too many parks, and we need to
Yeah.
consolidate the amenities and then just make the other parks, you know, nice grass, little landscape place where people can take, you know, take their little doggy for a walk and go sit and enjoy. And I hate to even go here, but I know what I'm saying is a little complicated, but I just think before we spend much of this money on these parks, we need to be sure that's what the neighbors want. You might, like you said, pickleball is becoming popular. I have heard from tennis players that tennis is becoming less and less popular. Basketball is super popular. It might even be that we find that, oh, in this neighborhood, people would rather have a pickleball or a basketball court, and then here we've gone and completely replaced the tennis courts, and they're not going to get used. And 40 years later or 30 years later, we're in the same situation.
Well, first of all, we need to make a decision on the 25%. I mean, is that the
Right.
direction of the commission? And I agree with that. And I think with that being said from Commissioner Haney is pushing it to the staff of saying, these are immediate needs of parks that are being used for basketball and tennis and such, you know, where we get the phone calls, and then we can make determinations down the road with not a whole lot of, you know, conduit thought or studies or anything like that, but, you know, would this be better off to be just a basketball court or just an open area? And we've got time to do that.
So we're willing to spend $300,000 to $500,000 on rehabbing some of these, but only with the sense that they really will be used.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Jenkins Circle Park is used for, you know, if they have pickup games every night or. But I know with the one pictures, we know that some of that were showed the main. I mean, there's a lot of people on the Fort Millen Park basketball court.
Oh, yeah.
And the tennis court, you know, we need to find out what we're doing with the amphitheater if we're moving forward with that. I know that the courts and the amenities at Lee P. Moore get used. You know, there's always people there, so, and we get a lot of phone calls about that. I mean, I think you could get to spending some significant dollars, you know, fairly rapidly with some of the hot spots.
Yeah, yeah.
And then work on what to do with these.
Well, even the demo on some of these, we decided to take them out. That'll come at a cost as well. We have to kind of placate that. And once you take them out, then you'll know whether it was really.
Well, I just think we do our own, and I agree with the mayor. We're not talking about hiring a planner, but this is kind of in-house planning. You know, it's something that, and yeah, it's going to come at a cost to take it out, but just overall for the city, you know, over the 5-year period that he's talking about, I just think we can have great improvement, great amenities, and great aesthetics just by doing a little more park planning.
Make sense?
Working something big like Lee P. Moore, when it gets heavy use, work that in and do some of the smaller secondary ones alongside it that year. And
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, what I'm hearing from the commission is about 3,000 to 4,000 of this to go to parks, having staff identify the most used, the need. Also for staff to come up with a plan, and this is to check to see if this is what the commission is saying, to look at alternate uses of parks, not just putting back what may be there, but taking a look at consolidating, looks what's being used, how it's being used, and perhaps even looking at presenting to the commission an alternate that is not just replacing what's there now, but a rethinking of it.
In some cases, rethinking it right down to a bench and some pretty green grass and some
Or
shrubs.
open space, yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, I
those
could
little,
put that
those
in.
little riders, if a kid, I mean, go out, and look at it. If it's covered in dirt and mildew and hadn't been, worn off and it ain't getting used. Don't spend the money to replace it. It's not.
Yeah,
So the immediate is, and this is to check with the commission, are we looking at 300 to 400 for staff to identify the most critical, most used, and to go ahead with that this year, and to come up with a plan on alternate uses of the rest, including perhaps in some cases replacing, but also maybe not replacing them all, tearing, demolishing, consolidating, and also looking at newer uses.
Yes. Well put.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to Pinecrest, that's certain uses there, and that would accommodate your Jenkins Pinecrest people, and over the Jenkins Park, but totally different uses. And that way you're not just repeating yourself over and over and over and over again all across the city.
Okay. Also on this list, there's about $380,000 for public works equipment.
yeah, what equipment is that? What,
Well, what kind of deal can you make?
I think we have made all the deals. This is just a few trucks and heavy equipment that just needs replacing. It's been years and years. It's been on the CIP. We haven't replaced it. I think we are spending more money repairing those now, so it's just time to replace.
Well, can you work these in on the same type program? I mean, you've got a $145,000 piece of equipment, you got a 50, 15, 135. Can you work it in on a
Yeah.
3-year program,
Sure.
one a year, or
Yeah.
2 years, something like that?
Depending on how much, the commission approves, we can figure out how to do that. Yeah, we can work with that.
I would like to see this number or rounded number put into a 5-year program off to the side. There's the discretion to spend those monies on the percentage, break it out of parks and public works. And police, what's $2,000 divided by 5 years?
yeah.
We'll give police $45 a year for their IT update. And work that in so that we can make a call if something were to happen, majorly happen in year 3 of this. We can put the brakes on and say, we're not working on playgrounds this year. There's more, we've got an issue here.
How would you say to put in,
Well, if you take
for
a
the,
million,
mainly talking about recreation? That's
$1.9 million, they're the majority of it. So you just take, for simplicity, simplicities, just $1.9 million or even $2 million
Yeah, call
if
it-
you wanted, and divide it out by the 5 years. And that's
Yeah.
what you get. Does that make sense, Mr. Bonaparte?
I'm hearing you. This were the list that we came up with, the most critical. This is not the list.
Sure.
This is the most
critical. And I'm sure that
And over a 5-year period,
more different things are gonna be added to it.
We knew more critical things. Right.
Now, what about
Well, I'm not saying here's
It's all-
exactly what you need
yeah.
to do. Here's additional money for your critical list that needs to be taken care of. Does that make sense?
Does to me.
So we've got this 2 million that that's the critical list, but we also need to be looking at whatever that dollar amount is each year just to keep up, I think is.
Just let me
In addition to your standard.
Yes.
park, amenities. parks and playground, and restroom repair, will have how much over a 5-year period?
Well, it's
Parks and grounds, playground and restroom repair. How much would they have for?
Well, it sounds like we're gonna get $400,000 a year. And I guess from that, we'll decide, what I'm hearing is that you'll have staff decide which is the most important on this list to use that $400,000 for.
But, you know, but like I'm saying, are you just talking about park amenities and park and ground, playground and restroom repairs? That's all I'm talking about right now.
Of that 400, let's see.
Where you got?
If this is like the critical list, I think we need to attack it faster than 5 years.
That was my position on it. A 5-year period, they've been waiting for 30 years. And it's been deteriorating, and it's been deteriorating.
Well, you got $1.5 million of the total, basically $1.5 million of the total in park amenities.
So it's 80% almost.
Yeah.
80% of the 400.
And it's $316,000 a year going into your parks beyond where you were
Right.
over the past 10 years.
Certainly better.
It's better.
And then next year maybe we'll have to depend.
Well, sort of, Parks has been getting about $300,000 a year. They didn't get anything this year because of budget constraints. So they've already been getting $300,000 a year, and still this is what we're seeing.
I get it. Life's tough. Still in a financial crisis.
Are these items that would have been on the
Not buy the
$300,000
Lamborghini,
per
let's buy
year
a
list?
Toyota.
Okay, so basically we're saying, let's do the 300,000 this year like we usually do.
3 or 4?
3 or 4. Actually, I said 4 or 5.
What about 5?
Make it 5.
No, absolutely.
But
What about 5?
Make it 5 then. Can we say 500?
500.
Split at 80% parks,
500.
20% public works.
500,000.
Public Works gets 1.
500,000.
Huh?
Is it we say
500,000. 80% to parks, 20% to
Based on
public
this.
works.
40% more than I have.
And .00001 to police. Go ahead and
So you're
fund
saying we should go ahead and fund the 200,000 to the police?
2,000.
Yeah, 2,000. I'm with you. I'm okay.
502,000 in the first year, and then back it down to 500.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I had to
Let's-
step out for a second. So we're to do 500,000 a year?
What I heard from the
500,000
commission is that we will use 500,000 of our reserves, 80% to parks, 20% to public works, and $2,000 to police. And I think it's fair to say that in the future, we'll come back and the commission could decide on an annual basis, based upon staff's assessment of the most critical at that time.
I agree.
Okay.
But please just don't replace something without being sure it needs to be.
We'll come back with a list of parts, what we think should be taken out and replaced with what, and we'll come back to
Yeah.
the commission.
Or some of them may need to be replaced with nothing, Bilal. Just,
Yeah, we'll look at all of that.
Yeah, what we heard,
Do you get input from the recreation department?
Yes, we will talk to them as well, yes.
Well, I think we need to talk to people too.
I was gonna say, maybe we can, some of us can talk to folks in our district or, I don't know. I don't wanna get into this whole big, go to each house in the neighborhood because, you know, if you haven't used the tennis court in 20 years, but, we're gonna take it out, well, I might use it sometime in the next 20 years. That's gonna be a real problem, but I think,
and if I could, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, I think that's excellent because if we're looking at not doing anything for a park or converting it into a nothing, it is you, the commissioners, the elected officials, that may hear from residents. So I think engaging them prior is important.
and I'm not saying convert it into a nothing. I'm saying change the use, make it attractive green space, a little meditation area. little doggy walk area.
And that's fine, but I
A
think,
dog and walk area. What about little babies and little children?
Well, yeah. That's
Okay, the essence of time. Seriously, we've spent a lot of time on this. I'd like to understand what we do.
Okay.
Walk babies and doggies.
I want a miniature golf course with clowns and.
Oh, yeah, that sounds like fun.
That's what you're gonna get.
You're right.
okay, Commission, Ms. Lindsay's reminded me, and I guess with the attorney, we do still need the direction on the policy, because using any of this does change the current existing city commission policy.
I would recommend bringing back at the next commission meeting a policy that states the reserves at no less than 25%.
And not have anything for storms.
25% for, as a.
25%.
Just flat 25%.
Yeah.
Okay.
25, okay, so we're doing away with the emergency.
One reserve.
One reserve. Doing away with the 250 and the 500.
Correct.
PDQR.
The next item is a discussion with the Public Works, the police department. In the interest of time, maybe we can have that at the next meeting, unless there's something the deputy chief wants to.
We can do whatever you want. I do accept for 2,000.
That's accepted.
Okay, if we can wait, in the essence of time.
Absolutely.
All right, the next item,
You
then,
guys are doing a
thank.
fine job.
Yes, we do have an introduction, however.
Yes, I was going to, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, just wanted to introduce a couple of members of the staff at the police department. This is Jennifer Durkee.
Jennifer Blake.
I'm sorry, Jennifer Blake. She's Jennifer Durkee. She's our crime analyst. She's the one that actually take all our statistical data and compile it and keep track of it to let us know what's going on throughout the city and allow us to actually dedicate our resources towards. And our member here, this is Ms. Bianca Gillette. She's our new PIO. She's from Lake Mary Police Department, where she was the police, the PIO there, and also a police officer there. So she just got here about a week or two or something. She hit the ground running because unfortunately we had some incidents recently where tragic incidents where we needed a PIO. So she hit the ground running and did a very good job.
Say your name again?
Bianca Gillette.
Yeah. Nice to meet you and have you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
You're going to be a lot busier in Sanford than you were in Lake Erie.
Nothing like the first time on TV talking about 4 pit bulls.
Still talking about pit bulls.
More exciting than we wrote traffic tickets.
Yeah.
I mean, no, that is,
Yeah, it's a little bit of difference. Okay, management partners.
The next item is the expedited review alternatives, and,
The building official's on his way down. We skipped the PD reports. I just shot him a text, so he's coming down right now.
Paul Park Rehab Design.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners.
Good afternoon. Floor is yours.
So we have put before you in the past, I believe it was last May, the conceptual design for Pop Park. And since then, we've gotten together and looked at the numbers and what can really be brought out from that conceptual design. So we've done several modifications and we've come up with a final design plan. And this is for Pop Park itself. When you all reviewed the conceptual plan last, that was for the entire Pop Park Village. So this is just for redesign of the park. It's going to be funded in part with 1792 CRA funds, recreation impact fees, and some second gen funds, Robert?
Yes.
So we are looking for approval of the design plan and the budget amendment.
I'm good with it. Anybody have any questions?
I just had a question. How do we how are we able to use impact fees on this since it's in the 16 part?
Recreation impact fees is going to be, the question was how are we going to be able to use that? Anything that's new in the park can have those fees applied. Anything that's existing in a replacement, we'd have to use the other funds, the 1792 CRA funds.
So what are we considering as the new?
The kiosk is new. The gateway features are new.
All the sidewalk?
A lot of the exterior hardscape will be paid through a second gen sidewalk fund.
Okay. All right, thanks.
The archways, the sign, things like that. Those are all new.
And this whole small dog area is fenced off.
And enlarged. A little bit bigger area.
You'll note that the south side of the park, we have eliminated the parking, and so now that parking is going on street. It'll be continued for more pet rescue by Judy's. The rest of that block will be continued with on-street parking.
You want the largest dog park you can, so it can regenerate itself and grow and stay clean, and so we be able to put the on-street parking and be able to accommodate that.
There's one other thing to note, just so you all are prepared when we get underway with the project. We do have to thin out the tree canopy in the park, otherwise we're not going to be able to get any grass to grow there. Elizabeth has gone out and identified some trees that should be removed, and there's about 7 or 8 trees. I think it's 8. 3 of the trees are a grouping of oaks up in the northwest corner. I think that the public is going to have a real reaction when those do have to come out, which we actually don't have included in this scope, but eventually they will have to come out. So one of the things that we're looking at, and we had a gentleman come out and kind of advise us on it, is if we take those trees out to actually do chainsaw art with them. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah, Castleberry did that in front of their city hall.
Yeah, several of the parks have done that in the region, and it's really beautiful. And so that might be an opportunity where even though we'll lose the trees, that we can, you know.
It's a form of public art, so maybe it's something we can work on. I think that's a cool idea. Really looks good.
I'll only say yes if there's a dolphin.
It's a dog park, not a dolphin park.
So it should be a cat.
Dolphin and a cat.
Well, the artist.
How many trees we got?
It'll be 3, and they're right in a corner by a bench.
A dolphin, a cat, and a
Fire hydrant.
fire hydrant.
No, they're putting in tons of plastic fake fire hydrants.
Mailman.
The chainsaw artist actually had an idea with one of them, the way the tree limb goes out, of having like a dog figure at the base of the tree looking up at a cat sitting in the tree.
That's totally cool.
We thought it was cute. We thought you would like it,
I
actually.
love it. I want some feline representation.
At least the dog gets the cat. Step down. Just step down.
No,
As
I
the
think
tree starts dying, the cat closer.
But we will have removal of 2 trees on the east side of the park for this project, but they're not, it's not a laurel, it's a, they're smaller. One laurel or both laurels?
There's quite a few laurels. You have one small oak and way at the trail. The representation there, you really don't see, you really do have a lot more canopy than you have. They want 20% less for grass to grow. You really don't do a lot of growing here at this park. You pretty much have to replace. Most dog parks are a lot larger than this, and they rotate them like you would agricultural crops. Let that build back up. Go back.
Well, most dog parks are field areas.
They're fields
where we have all the trees.
So we're trying to get as less canopy as we can. It's actually good for the tree. It's healthier.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have a tough time getting grass to grow with the heavy
And
use.
It's better now to take it down while the park is closed. You're already there. So it's going to have to be closed during this time.
I think this is really neat.
Yeah, good job.
Oh, and one last thing, when the artist does, Mr. Bonaparte, when the artist does the dog and the cat, I'd like to request that Gidget be the model for the cat.
Well, we don't have funding for that yet, so.
I'll pay
We're
that
looking for
myself.
funding.
I'll pay for that
There you go.
myself. If Gidget can be the model.
There you go. We have our first sponsor.
I'm not paying for the dolphin.
Do you have any other questions about the project?
Anybody have any other questions?
Christine, on the maintenance on that, I mean, we're just gonna be replacing grass just over and over and over and over and over.
Well,
The canine artificial turf is extremely expensive, and there's not even, we can't even come close to it in this budget. The original park design was was over $600,000. We were able to kind of redo this and get $200,000 and make an impact, because you definitely want to open up a park that they can use.
Right.
So sod is 25 cents a square foot. You really, the internal there was basically the paw print was grass and then mulch, where more activity is, and then the outside was less passive for dogs. So it's sod.
so there is still going to be a large area that is mulch only.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, where we talked about the other dog parks that have the field areas, they're able to cordon them off and put the dogs in other areas while they regrow the grass. We just don't have that advantage at this park to be able to do that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
you're welcome.
I have an unrelated question. Who's responsible for the flag out on Memorial Park?
It's lost its name.
It's come loose.
Lost it to it.
It came out of a
It's
wrong.
only attached at the top.
Oh, did the grant? I
We'll have
can't
somebody
see it.
in.
One of the Brown's Road.
Okay, the
Expedited review, yes. Building official, fire department. This is a follow-up to a recommendation from the management partners report, and prior to going forward with preparing an actual document, we wanted to have a discussion with the city commission to see if this is something that you would like us to pursue. And Mr. Aldrich has put together some examples of what the fees would be. So it is a recommendation of the management partners, and this time turn over to the building official.
Thank you, sir. When it was given to me, I did some homework to find out what other departments typically charge for this. We've honestly only been asked a few times if we have an expedited process, and nobody ever got real pushy about it. But when we were asked to do this, it appeared that 3 times the normal fee is what most people charge due to the fact construction's picking up, thank goodness. So it is a lot tougher if we have to farm it out, if we have to ship it out to a service, you know, a company that does that, engineering firm or whatever. They're gonna make sure they get their monies big time. And the expedited part, to put that in, then you're asking to task them to something they gotta get to quick, meaning overtime, et cetera, et cetera.
So to do the expedited, you'd be shipping it out to a third party, is that?
Depending on the magnitude of the project. If it was, let's say, some single-family homes, probably not. But if it was a really large, significant commercial project, let's say half again the size of the hospital, or something like If the View, something of that magnitude, we'd have to. We would have to, yeah. Because we wouldn't have the expertise. There's all kinds of engineering firms that, the company I worked for before did that on, they have architects and engineers on staff. That's their full-time duties.
And for some of the smaller projects, it may require staff overtime to get it done.
Right. And since they'd be expedited, that would be the whole gist of it. They'd expect it in a rapid turnaround. It'd be the next project the residential plan reviewer would be tasked with, just so we could assure them it was expedited. It wasn't just as quick as we thought we could get it out.
Right. So you actually guarantee a time for them?
No, we can't. We can't. It'd be as quick as, we could give them a guesstimate. That'd be the best we could do.
So you would say, listen, for us to do it on a regular process for the step, just for the single family at $750, it's going to be 3 weeks review. If you
we could give them
$22.50, it's going to be a week.
If it was like a house, we could probably guarantee a few day turnaround. If it was a pretty magnificent size project, by statute, we got to turn them around within a month on a single family. But anything else, there is no statute on. You just get it to the best you can. And that all came up from years ago, South Florida dragging their feet and putting people through quite a process.
That's what my concern would be. You know, if I come in and I pay $9,000 to have it expedited, by the time it gets done, I was only a week of difference. Well, I'd like to have $6,000 back.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know how you would do that, saying, I think you'd almost have to guarantee a time of it.
There's gotta be some kind of a benchmark, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what that answer is, but
See, that's the problem with plan review. You wouldn't specifically know the magnitude of the project until you were way deep into it. You know, like, the things that take the most time, honestly, are scientific type buildings and medical buildings, because there's so many more codes involved. The kind of stuff we don't dwell into a whole lot. And that's why you would almost always farm it out anyway. But small commercial projects or medium-sized ones we could probably handle in-house without a problem, because we've got a couple other people that don't use all of their abilities to help with that we could, you know, like myself. And I have one other plan examiner that could step up to the magnitude of a little more on the commercial end, because he's responsibly mainly for the residential. It would depend on the time frame when it hit us, and that's why it's a 3 times fee. It'd have to be something substantial enough so we don't lose money if we were to farm it out. And you sure wouldn't want to lose money if you were keeping it in-house. That wouldn't even make sense. And to be really perfectly honest, unless we get somebody that's, you know how every construction project, any builder knows, should have been done yesterday already. They already have the, I want it yesterday process in their mind. We deal with that all the time, but we've never had anybody come and say, well, I'll pay extra for said service. That's yet to be determined. We just thought it'd probably be in the city's better interest to have it on the table if it came up, and not bat an eyelash. Say, it's been adopted, commission has approved it, you know, instead of us.
I mean, I'm totally fine with it. I'll be honest with you. If I'm a contractor, I'm just saying from a contractor side. If I'm looking at it and I've got the construction that I'm being, signed up to do. If I've got time limits on it, and I pay it, my first question is going to be, okay, if I give you three times booked, when am I getting this back? Versus normal.
We could give them a rough guess, but if it got shipped out, then I'd be relying on, sources I'm not as familiar with. I know a couple outfits that do this, but never have attached a drop dead time limit to it and said, what's it going to be? Because typically they're given a project, a couple weeks later, bam, here you go, done. And of course that means done to the best of that person's ability. Then it goes back to whoever's architect, engineers, and starts over again with they tweak it and get it back.
Sure.
Usually, to be perfectly honest, the bigger the project, the less you get that time frame taking too much time, because you've got better quality people performing those duties. It's not some guy that just does it as a sideline.
Let's roll with it, and if we run into the issue, we cross the bridge when we get to it.
Well, if we implement this, does this bump other projects? I mean, you said it would be the next one blank.
If it was expedited and it was in-house, it would be the very next thing that would hit the guy's table.
Okay.
That's where the expedited part comes in. Say
So that
the guy
puts
says,
everybody
okay, I
else further
want my
behind,
house expedited.
Unless we pay overtime.
Yeah, but typically the smaller the project, the less the time frame. And in reality, we always try to give people a swag. We try to give them a heads up what they're looking at. Because the last thing we want is more phone calls.
Right.
Oh, come on, y'all said it'd be 2 weeks and 2 weeks is gone. What are we looking at now? We don't treasure those.
That's the other thing we need to be.
The Disney Fast Pass.
The what?
The Disney Fast Pass.
They still do that?
But that just putting a better understanding is, for an example, in the same family, if I paid a plan review fee of $750, how long would I have to wait? Okay.
Typically, it all depends on how many are ahead of you. We would tell most people the turnaround should be 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, already the turnaround is supposed to be 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, I said, okay,
I understand that you have an expedited plan review fee. I'm gonna pay you this $2,250.
Mhm.
How long would I have to wait?
Probably 2 days.
Yeah,
It would
but
probably
mine
be
said
able
an
to be
extra 2 days now.
com-
Thanks a lot.
completely reviewed in 2 days. So it's all in the eye of the beholder. If a developer or a builder has got, because some of them do get a substantial benefit coming in on time. Some really big jobs, they get crazy money.
So this would be kind of like an exceptional, when somebody would pay.
Yes, yes, ma'am, it definitely would be. It would be. It'd be something where some company is getting a bonus for
Right.
delivering on an early time frame. A lot of state jobs are like that. When I worked in Texas, a lot of state was like that.
You're gonna see it on a big commercial deal probably.
Oh, yeah.
versus, one single.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in agreement.
I think we just need to watch it, so we can change it if we need to.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm still waiting for the first one.
Well, I think the other checkpoint will be if you, the commissioners, get complaints from somebody, say, I paid and didn't, yeah.
We didn't deliver, and we understand that. You're usually the first one that calls, sir.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
All right, in the interest of time, we had a number of items that
Thank you.
are on for tonight's adoption that were listed. However, if the commission has specific questions for any of them, the Airport Authority Mutual Economic Incentive is not on this one. We're withdrawing that after discussions with Diane Cruz. That will be on the February 8th City Commission meeting. There is the interlocal with the county for the Touch a Truck outreach, which is pretty straightforward, but we had it on here in case there was a question. So there are other items that the commission might have had questions on, Schedule J, Schedule G, are on here. If the commission has specific questions, we can respond or move on, because there's one item that's been requested to be added to the agenda that is not on the agenda.
Oh.
What's that?
It's a request from Congressman Micah.
Oh, I can do that real quick.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, all it is copy. It's for us to do a resolution. When Mike asked all the cities, he either sent it to me or he didn't send it to me. I deleted it or I didn't receive it. I don't remember seeing it. But he's going for funding from Congress for replace the MAP 21. A pilot project is basically synchronize the traffic lights, and so he's asking the cities, for synchronicity.
Yes.
It does indicate that should it go through, there may be a request for municipalities for funding as well as staff resources.
Funding that may be.
The very last,
Got it.
be further resolved. City of Sanford will be open to considering future recommendations that financial resources in the form of a local match may be committed to the pilot.
We're open to considering. So we'll approve that at the end of the
Got it.
meeting tonight.
I did have some questions on the lands in Schedule J. So then I can bring it up tonight.
Well, we've got about 15 minutes.
Okay.
5.
Okay, who am I asking questions of?
Which one is it?
Schedule J. Okay, on page 29.
That lady. I will do my best.
Actually, 28, 29. 28, tree removal prior to the issuance of site development permit to remove trees, the administration signed this. Okay. And then at the bottom of page 29, vegetation maintenance, tree pruning, and tree removal, and tree trimming within the rights of way may only be implemented in accordance with a written plan approved in writing by the city. Is that for any, I mean, the way I read this is I can no longer take care of trimming trees out in front of my house so I can see to get out.
unless I
Right.
come ask.
No, the intention for these modifications, per my discussions with the Parks Department, is that they're trying to cut down on the work that the utilities companies are doing to the trees where the power lines are concerned. They're trying to increase the penalties. They're trying to make it so that they can keep them from going out and hacking the trees without getting permission from the city. So that's the intent of the right-of-way the right-of-way maintenance of said trees.
Okay, but
Well, Commissioner.
But does it, I mean, did I miss where it says that this doesn't apply to Art Woodruff?
No, again, just for the record.
I do a lot of tree lights.
Just for the record, Eileen Henson's our Development Services Manager, has been working with our Parks Department on updating the schedule to meet the grant requirements that the city's received. While that may have been the intent for modifying the language in this section, as you noted, Commissioner, that does, as you have observed, apply to anyone that's planning to do work, including Mr. Woodruff, if you're using that as an example in front of your home. It's in the section of right-of-way. This is the city's jurisdiction, and we want to ensure that the work is done appropriately, as well as by appropriate individuals, whether they're a contracted, licensed contractor, or if we're going to sanction the homeowner to allow them to proceed. So yes, the intent was for anyone involved in work within the right-of-way.
But only in the right-of-way. So all the rest of the tree, and it's
Well,
very unusual to have a tree in the right-of-way.
It applies, but it does, but only if it applies to public utility providers. So I read that as, well, if I'm going out and fussing with a tree that's got the power lines running through it, I need to get permission first. Otherwise, I'm going out to just trim some bushes and take care of a crepe myrtle, then it's not affecting the public utilities. I can do what I want.
When applied to public utility providers,
Right.
as opposed to when it's applied to me.
May only be implemented with written plan approved in writing by the city when applied to them. When it applies to them, so it doesn't apply to you, then you're.
Now, if your concern is relative to the general maintenance, as you know, generally the sodded area of the property or right-of-way, rather, in front of properties, whether it's residence or commercial, is that property owner's responsibility to maintain. So if it's the general maintenance, they're not going to have to come to the city each and every time they mow or trim the vegetation. But if it's something of the context, as Eileen indicated, that is when the utility companies are coming through to do some rather significant, what's called hat racking and and
I
other
understand
activities.
that, I'm just having a hard time reading that that's what this says.
Okay.
You're telling me that's what this says.
That was indeed the purpose and intent, but if there's any suggested changes to clarify, we'll be happy to entertain those.
When applied to public utility providers.
Add something in that just does not apply to the property, just doing basic routine maintenance.
Personal routine maintenance.
I don't know. So I'm not gonna do it on a power line anyhow, so.
If you're up there on a ladder doing.
But I'm gonna be doing it in the right way.
I'm gonna do it right away too, just not up by the top line.
I just. Okay, and somewhere else, does it ever say what size trees can't be removed?
Well,
It talks about size of tree that's regulated.
right, the minimum size that you require for a permit, and then what the requirements for a permit, and then what types of trees can be removed, and what has to be done in order to remove them. There's no maximum size. I mean, if a really big, old, historic tree is dead, it needs to be removed regardless of size. But if there's like a 2-inch caliper, that's kind of sprung up and it started growing, yeah, there are certain.
Unless you're in a planned development or you have a plan where that tree was required.
Okay. I'm just not reading it carefully enough.
I kind of died out halfway through it too.
Because it seems to me, it never really says that, you know, I mean, basically I'm violating the law every time I mow the grass.
Mowing your grass.
I have a whole
there's
lot of little
kind-
oak trees that grow up.
Yeah, no, they're,
If you have those questions about it,
Yeah. 6 inches. It's got to have a 6-inch diameter and stuff too.
Before I
Qualify
can
for
cut
it
it down?
before you can't cut it down.
Okay. All right.
But there are
Unless
exempt
you
trees
cut.
too that are nuisance trees and things like that,
Yeah, I saw that
regardless of
list.
size. Right.
I'm cutting down my those.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, you all right with that then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got anything on J?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Mr. Brunswick,
Briefing items, mayor's annual appointment, boards and
I'm pushing that off to the next week. So please pull that from the agenda. I have not finalized it. Appointments to board and committees. City manager's annual performance evaluation. I think that everyone received everybody's performance evaluations in the, with the books and your attachments. And once again, the city manager scored high in a lot of areas. There were some good comments on there about performance and the future and what we're gonna do together. It would be my recommendation that, I don't think you've received the 3% raise yet. It would be my recommendation based upon everyone's performance that the city manager receives the same as the staff on the 3% raise, and it would be retro to the time of position when we did the raises.
thank you. What the commission has done in the past, and if it's all right with the attorney, they have just raised that as a item at the regular meeting.
Used to be voted on at the meeting.
Okay?
And I thank you, Mayor, and again, as I said in my email on Friday, I'd look to schedule time with me with each of you. Part of it's to go over the evaluation, but also just to check in. We haven't done it, so I'll be reaching out to all of you to do that.
Okay. Bill, does that need to be brought up as like item G, or?
You could just add it to the appropriate place.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. City manager's comments. One that I wanted just to share with you, you saw that we did get a response back from David, who wrote to the Orlando Sentinel, suggesting that we provide a response to the Orlando Sentinel, sharing our position, which is contrary to what he wrote. And staff's position is that would be good, however, we think it should come from the mayor as opposed to staff. But I didn't want to presume, and therefore just wanted to see if that's what the commission felt we should provide the Orlando Sentinel with the response.
Sure.
Okay.
I think he thinks his comment from the top 100 is a lot more special, a lot more people read it than actually did, versus a response to the Orlando Sentinel. But I don't think we form it as a response to Mr. Levitt. I think we form it as, hey, this is what's coming up, and we'd like to get the true message out as to what it is, not in it
Right.
for a response.
We don't want to, yeah.
Yeah.
And David, I happen to know him well because he comes to every Calno meeting. And this is his bailiwick. At every single Calno meeting, he addresses something similar to this. Very nice, very respectful, very, very good guy. It's just what he does. So I don't think he meant it with any malice whatsoever.
I had a very pleasant conversation
Oh, he's
with
very
him.
nice, actually, yeah. He
And
comes
as
to
you saw in
every
his
Calno
response email, he acknowledged that the city's doing good things.
meeting. You'll get that before he lets us have it. Yeah, he's real nice.
On that same topic, just to let everybody know, a committee is being formed we'll probably do 2 mailers in support of that.
Committee is being formed
A
of,
political committee.
okay. And how do we fit into that? We don't. It's all citizens?
Make a donation, but, thank you. I'll give you more information at the next meeting.
You're part of the committee?
I am not part of the committee, but I am working with those that are.
Well, what kind, who's the committee,
It's
what
a-
is it for?
It's a political committee
It's a
that can do
PAC.
campaigning for the referendum.
Oh, okay, I see what
And they're
you're
gonna
saying.
raise money to do probably 2 mailings.
Oh, okay, I see
And
what you're
they
saying.
will be on the educational side more so than
Okay,
the
good,
campaigning side.
good.
Okay, anything else? Yeah, Randy, you got anything? Art, anything else before we go? Patty? No?
I don't know if I can read, but I came into that meeting briefly the other day. Was it some type of resolution? The meeting with the historic board?
Resolution, I'm not so sure. They went through every item. I was very impressed with what the HPB did that night, going through every item and discussing what really mattered and what they probably would have approved. And I think there's 2, maybe 3 items they think need to be redone. And we can talk about that tonight unless you want to continue now. Probably should do it tonight because it's a public hearing, right?
Quasi, yeah.
Okay.
It's a public hearing.
I didn't hear what you said anyway. Okay, anything else? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Hey, Jeff.